Welcome to another tutorial for the Web Publishing 1 class at Tri-C Spring Semester 2012. This is just a little demo on a specific thing that we haven't dealt with yet, which is a definition list. But along the way, we're going to talk about a couple other things that hopefully will be helpful. So let's just get started, and I'm going to fire up Text Wrangler. And you'll see I've got the bare bones here of a standard HTML page. And the way I got here, in fact, was to open up one of the demo files from the textbook for the Bubble Up Scuba Club site and delete everything except for the head tags and the body tags and the HTML opening closing tag, doc type, all that sort of stuff. So every web page we do is going to need these elements. There's also a generic style sheet link in here that we're going to have to customize in terms of the information, but that's in there because at this point we're pretty much going to be using external style sheets all the way through. So to start things off, we might as well get this going right from the beginning and have a decent title. So this assignment, or this tutorial, is related to the midterm assignment, which is that research and big old list of links related to some topics. So I'm just going to call this, because I don't really have a topic yet, midterm project big list o links and more. Okay, so maybe that sounds a little bit of interesting to somebody, so that's what our title is going to be. Now, here's where we're going to put all of our information. And if you remember, what we've been doing is we've been working with a couple of divs most of the time in order to let us lay out the page the way we'd like. So the first one that you may remember from our in-class demo is a div called wrapper. So div ID equals wrapper. And in general, that wrapper encloses everything else on the page. We've been using comments to identify the ends of divs, so end of wrapper. You may comment things a little bit differently, but it's a good practice, I think, to use comments. Typically, again, we would have div ID equals very standard practice header. I don't know exactly what we're going to do with that yet, but let's assume we will probably use a header. Let's see, we want to close that div, and I'm going to pick up this comment and add it here. So this is going to be the end of the header. Another very common div ID equals nav. Again, I don't know exactly at this point what my nav is going to look like, what it's going to contain, but I know I'm probably going to have a nav. And so I'll paste in here end of nav. And typically, so we have the header. Oops, let me change that around. Well, we could put the nav inside the header. That actually wouldn't be a bad idea, but depending on what you want. In this case, I'm going to have the nav outside of the header. So I want to have something in the header, not quite sure what it'll be yet. Might be some text, H1 probably, might be some an image. But I think I want to open and close the header and then separately have the nav. And then we would have a div called content, main content, something like that. In this case, I know some specific things I want to do with this, so I've already thought this through a little bit. So I'm going to put in a div called intro, because I want to have an intro paragraph or two explaining what this is about. So I'm going to put intro in there. Just grab that, end of intro. And then I also know that I'm going to have a big old list of links, because that's what this project is about. So ID equals links. So I've thought about this. Actually, if I were smart, I didn't. I sort of mentally did this, but it would be smarter to actually sketch it out on paper and figure out how you want to lay this out in general. links. But so this is what I know. Here's the wrapper that contains everything. Then I'm going to start with a header, and then I'm going to have a nav, then I'm going to have an intro, and then I'm going to have a list of links. And so each of these is a container. So what we're looking at is containers, and then we're going to put information into them. All right, so I'm going to save that, a little quick Command S. And oh, that was really a bad idea because I saved it as a template. That wasn't smart because I wanted to keep my template intact. So I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to save it as index, which is, generally speaking, the home page for any website is going to be called index. So I'm going to save this as index.html. I'm going to start a new folder for my, I'll just say midterm project. And I'm going to save it inside of there instead. Okay, that makes more sense. And you know, I may actually leave this as my template because as a general rule, this is not a bad start to a web page. I would not necessarily have these two divs in every one of them, but oh, you know what? And I also forgot. Usually a footer div is a good idea, which is where you typically put your information about copyright and how to contact you, email address, and things like that. So good to have that. And let's just put into footer. And of course, cut and copy and paste is your friend, but be sure to make the changes as you need them. So let me look one more time. Wrapper opens and closes there. Then we have header that opens and closes. Nav opens and closes, intro opens and closes, links open and close, footer open and close. Okay, so it looks like we're in pretty good shape. So I'm going to save this again as index.html. And because I think this is in general not a bad starting point for a web page, I'm even going to go back and resave this as my template. So I think it'll be better than what I had in the very beginning. So AW template is what I called it. And so my suggestion is once you create what you feel is like a pretty good general structure for your work, save it as a template, and then you can start with that every time instead of starting from a blank page. All right, so there's my template, but really let me open the one that I want to work on, which is index. Okay. Now, similarly, I've started a style sheet template. And I just put in a comment to identify it, my name, the date, and this is going to be for our week 6 assignment. So what are we going to put in this style sheet? Well, I like to start with the biggest, I like to start by defining tags and then start with sort of the biggest and work my way down and then add some other things. So body, typically, it's going to be your starting point. And I'm going to put some things in there. Then I may style my H tags in a particular way. I may not. I'm going to put this in there just in case. I don't always style those specifically. Paragraph tag, typically I'm going to do something with that, so I'll put that in there. Image, again, typically I'm going to do something with images, so I might put that in there. Let's see, any other tags right off the jump that I want to do something with. We could put in UL, OL, so on, but for now let's just leave that as it is. And we'll put in, I know that in general, most of the time I'm going to want to do styles for links. I want to change the color and possibly the text decoration and things like that, so that we're going to have if you remember the sequence, a link, love ha, a visited, oops, let me go down the line, a hover. And you know, if you're tired of typing, you can do a little copy and paste. A active would be our last one. So I'm probably going to change color and or text decoration in these. So there's the styles for the links. Then And the sequence for this is not, you can possibly do the sequence differently, but I'm going to put in another section where I'm going to put the styles for the containers. And if you remember the containers we use, they're kind of the standard ones that you might see. So, and we used IDs, so that's going to be wrapper. And I'm going to do a little copy and paste here just to speed this up a little bit. Boom. Trying to think. We had, I think, about 4 or 5, so we'll put them in there. We had wrapper. Whoops, come back. We had header. We had nav. We had intro. We had links. And the last one, I think, was footer, if I remember correctly. Let me get this window so we can see that a little bit. Okay, there we go. Links. Oops, come on. There we go. And the last one is footer. So, and then we might have a section down here for miscellaneous styles. Style. And these are typically going to be classes, so that if you remember, IDs, which I just defined when I called my containers, are usually going to be IDs, can only be used one time on a page. Classes can be used multiple times. So a couple of the classes we might use are, so we use a dot to indicate that it's a class. I like to often move my images to the right or left using, oops, that's not what I want. I want this to say image right. And then what I'm going to do there is I'm going to just simply do the style float right. And similarly, probably going to want to have the option of floating it the other way. So image right, image left, float left. And then clear, and in this case you can actually either clear left or clear right, or you can clear both. And so this is just a general clear style that will clear class, it will clear both. So these, we may use them just because these are sort of standard things. So this is a pretty good template, I think. At least it's a pretty good starting point for one. So I'm going to save this as the template. Style sheet template, because I think I'll probably reuse that. And I'm also going to specifically save it for today's assignment as the style sheet week. Week 6. All right, wrapper demo, save. Okay, so now we're good to go. We've got a starting point in terms of the HTML. We've got a starting point in terms of the template. I'm sorry, in terms of the style sheet. So we're ready to get going on this assignment. So I'm going to end this particular tutorial right now since we've got the basics in place, and you may want to get caught up if you're not there yet. And then in the next tutorial, we'll put this to work on the week 6 assignment, which is some research and information gathering.